Alright, so I promised an update video. I promised an update video, and I figured that this was a pretty good time to do it. Um, as usual, I'm Tobias, and this is a vlog of some of my changes since I started tea. I'm pretty excited. Tomorrow's my 9-month anniversary of starting tea, and I feel like I've had kind of a mixed bag with respect to the changes, which pretty much I think I knew going in. So I've been coping with that. And it has also been nearly a month since I got my name legally changed, which is very exciting. Um, that also means that it's been 2 or 3 months since I started going by that name. Somewhere around there. Let's round up. Call it 3 months. And that's really cool. So, with respect to changes, right off the bat, I think my name and my level of comfort with my name has been a pretty significant change. Like I mentioned in an earlier vlog that I was needing to be patient with myself. You know, I went by a certain name most of my life and then I changed it. And so, of course, it would take time to adjust. I am not one of those people that found their name and just felt an instant connection. I really had to work at finding mine and put in time and dedication to making it work. But I'm pleased to say that the more I go by it, the more comfortable it feels. On the flip side, the more uncomfortable I've been feeling when I get called by my birth name. In particular, the parent that my partner and I live with right now um, is either oblivious or in denial that I am transitioning. And so although I have shared the fact that I go by Tobias with her, she still calls me my birth name. There's a cat joining me. Hello, little cat. Here's Rose Quartz. Rose Quartz calls me nothing because she's a cat, and I love her all the more for it. But yeah, my partner has been talking about like code switching. She calls it with my parents a lot, which is this phenomenon where in the rest of our lives, I'm Tobias. She calls me Tobias, and that's my name. That's just who I am. But with parents who either refuse or are unaware that, like, seriously, that's my name, she has to go back to my birth name, or she feels this pressure to. And I frankly don't really have a comfortable solution to that. I've been kind of just dealing with it on the go, but I have to admit that it's been really beginning to eat at me. Um, it feels a little bit more and more like I live kind of a double life. But with all due respect, that's always been kind of a dynamic with my adoptive family. They have been kind of unwilling to accept me as I am in a few respects, not necessarily having anything to do with being queer and being trans. And I think the older I get and the more thought I put into it and the more work I put into myself, the more I realize that I can't be waiting on their approval or their understanding necessarily. I have to get on with my life. But I have to admit that it's painful sometimes. Um, Conversely, I had a really excellent talk with my biological mom and my siblings. And in fact, I directed my sister to my channel. So if you're watching this, hello, what's up? And even though my bio family on my mom's side lives in more of a rural area, more of a traditionally kind of like red area, conservative, Christ-fearing, things that tend not to be associated with acceptance. The amount to which it's obvious that they're trying is staggering for me. Because in particular, I think in stark contrast to the response that I've gotten from my adoptive family, which has been largely pretty fucking lukewarm, to be frank. It's like, yes, I get misgendered, and they get it right sometimes, and they work on getting it right. And as soon as like I established my new name in this recent conversation, for the most part, they began calling me Tobias. And not even the parents that I had come out to before, that is my dad and my stepmother, have deigned to make the switch. They are like, well, why don't you just do this other thing? And just offering all kinds of advice. And it's like, because I decided I wanted to change my name, now can we go with it, please? No. Like, it's an ongoing dynamic with them that the example I like to give is I could tell them that the sky is blue and they will ask me to justify it. And it's been an exhausting way to grow up. And I've only begun to realize some of the longer term effects of that recently. And it just kind of sucks. Um, for my part, I could be more militant about no, like, I don't go by the short form of my birth name. I am Tobias, and that's my name. Please call me that. But that's been hard. I haven't really had a chance to have that chat with them, and I would much rather do it in person or at least on a video chat, you know. And it's a little exhausting sometimes. But anyway, back to my bio family and like the chat with that. They had some questions about, in particular, like my birth mom knows transgender people, but the trans people that she's familiar with more so are binary trans people, I think. And so she had questions about the pronouns, like why do you use they? And she had questions about sort of the nature of what it is to be non-binary, I guess. Um, and I'm all about those. I mean, that's part of the reason that I started this channel, was not only to like answer questions for people who have them, because I love sharing my experience, but also to offer that explanation, either to people out there who might be questioning themselves or just people who want to know more about what it is to have this life experience. And my cat is departing. Farewell, rose quartz. But the conversation that I had with them left me in such a smiley mood, and I felt really good about it with my biological family. And so A plus, like, just all the more proof that you don't have to get it right every time. Just put in some fucking effort and don't make it about you and demanding justification for your confusion, for your comfort, so that my existence is such that it troubles you less, I guess. In a much more concise way of saying that might just be like, allow me to show you who I am and celebrate who I am. Don't interrogate me about why I am who I am. It seems to me that when I feel comfortable with you and comfortable that I don't have to justify, the explanations will come. It's just been really great ever since I met my bio family on my mother's side. I love them to pieces, and the older I get, the more connected. It's been something of an identity crisis a little bit for me. Like, I see more of myself in like the ways that I see a lot of my bio family behaving versus the ways that I was raised with. And I think my adopted family is a little bit in denial about that. So, things to deal with. With that said, another happening in my life, which is an update less than a change for me, is that I might be potentially meeting some of my paternal family soon. So, a long story longer is that certain events occurring before my birth with my paternal family led to my adoption, more or less. And so it's been a bit of a fear factor for me, potentially meeting them. And they moved to the Los Angeles area where I've been living with my partner fairly recently, like in the last couple of years. Previously, they were in a different time zone. And so it was just not really going to happen before. It would have had to be a very big trip in order for me to go meet them. The supports weren't necessarily there like the way that they were for me to meet my maternal family. But I might be meeting my sister and maybe my brother on my bio dad's side in the coming week or so. And I'm pretty excited about that. I feel like I relate a lot more or a lot more easily to my just people in my family now that I am older, now that I am trying to be myself a little bit more. And I guess I would call that a change. You know, they say with transition that the proper treatment is acceptance so that all of the feelings of negativity and dysphoria aren't necessarily being caused by the family situation. And that has certainly been true in my case. Um, I'm still not out to most of my adoptive family, and I'm about to go on a trip with some of them. So we'll see how that goes. With that, also, I recently, or I say recently, I went to go get my driver's license updated with my new name a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still waiting on that in the mail. And I live with a parent who is either in denial or doesn't know about my transition. And so, suffice to say, I have certainly not shared with her that I legally changed my name. Um, it's been a little terrifying waiting for that driver's license to come, especially because I do have this trip coming up. So I just kind of wish the DMV would hurry the fuck up a little bit. Our mailman also comes at like 9 o'clock at night for some bizarre reason. And so I spend the entire day, in particular, like with work, I tend to work very early morning shifts right now. And so I can spend the entire day twiddling my little thumbs for nothing. But I do have my insurance card now in my name, which is nice. The process of getting all of my documents updated, I honestly could have made more of this happen. I could have been more on it than I have been. Like, I haven't gotten my birth certificate updated, and I haven't asked to renew my passport with my new name yet. Um, but I do have my social security number in my new name, and I do have my insurance card, as I mentioned, in my new name. I haven't migrated my bank accounts yet, but my workplace knows. And it's been a bit of a gradual change. A part of that is simply because of the amount of emotional bandwidth I haven't been feeling too great in the past bit since I updated. And there are a few factors at play there, which I'll delve into later. But as a result, sort of the amount of energy I have to like go out into the world and do things, in particular because it's Los Angeles and it's very hard to get around without a car. In particular, if you're moving like between neighborhoods. And so I just haven't really gathered my chickens together to get all of my stuff updated as quickly as I could have because of the amount of places that I might be asked to go. Like, I stood in line at the DMV for like 2 hours just to get that update in place. Southwest Airlines knows my new name, so that's exciting. And a part of the reason I'm low-key shitting myself about the fact that my driver's license isn't here yet. But I think that's all for social changes for now. Really, with my name, just kind of to put an end note on that, a bookend, if you will. The more that I use it and the more that is who I am to people in the world, people who have no idea what my previous name was, the more me it feels. And that's been fantastic. But yeah, so there have been some physical changes. It's been a little bit subtle. It's been very subtle, I should say. I'm on a dose now of T that would be considered like standard for an FTM. So for a binary trans person. And what that ideally means is that my changes would be coming more quickly. That may be true. I mean, it took me 6 months to start sprouting longer hairs on my upper lip on low dose testosterone, so I feel like any changes that I've had more rapidly than that probably relate to the higher dose of T. But as I said, it's really been kind of minor. Like, often feel a sense that, like, although, yes, there's been a change in my voice, it hasn't been all that dramatic. I would say that I'm getting sirred and ma'amed about 50-50 at work right now. Um, Recently, I've been feeling a little phlegmy, which I know can come with vocal changes, but when I first started tea, I was all like, I think I got sick like the week after I started tea, frankly. And so when my throat got scratchy, I was like, oh boy, my voice is about to change. This is like a thing that I was waiting for 3 months. And of course, that was just tremendously ridiculous wishful thinking because nothing happened, really. I would say the most of my voice changes have happened over the past 6 months and not the 3 months before then. And I think that the higher doses of tea that I've been taking are probably related to that. I've also heard that changes come more quickly with injected tea versus transdermal. I'm not totally sure whether that's true. Um, but with that said, I don't know what my voice is doing. I do notice that I tend to use a different pitch or like timbre of voice depending on like activity, which has been kind of weird. Um, I've been really fighting uptalk. So that's where your voice kind of does this, even at the end of a sentence, and you're not asking a question. It's a little bit of a Southern California thing, which is where I was raised, that Valley Girl thing, allegedly. But also it's associated with feminine speech and kind of uncertainty and stuff like that. So I have really tried hard in the past like 3 months or so to kill that dead. Um, I feel pretty confused about how my intonation should be, so I worry sometimes that it seems unnatural. But I don't really feel like I can afford any kind of like training right now, and so that's just kind of been a thing I've been figuring out on my own. And obviously, I don't have the resonance of somebody who went through a testosterone first puberty because I came to HRT later in the game. Later, where I started is pretty common for a lot of trans people, but for instance, if I had avoided an estrogen puberty, my larynx would have lengthened and I would have had a deeper, like, chest voice, like a lot of men do. But I don't. I do notice out in the world that many men actually have a higher pitched voice than I do. So that's been kind of weird and different to observe. And yet I still may get ma'amed in the presence of such people. Um, I recently watched a documentary. I think it's called Do I Sound Gay? I think it's on Hulu. And it was interesting and kind of reassuring to watch in the sense that many of the men who were featured on the show, who are cisgender men, have higher pitched voices and also get called ma'am on the phone, despite being basically as much of a man as possible, as society would grant them the privilege of being men. And for me, I found that really comforting. And so I would say one of my social-ish changes has been that I've started to take it a little less personally when I get called ma'am. And it's interesting too, like I mentioned before, that I might get to a point where being called masculine titles or like he, him, or like sir would come to feel dysphoric because I've never identified as a binary man. And I think that that's come a little bit more into focus as I've chilled the fuck out a little bit about when people call me man. Where it's like, it doesn't bug me yet. Maybe it will later, I don't know. But it doesn't bug me yet when people call me sir or he, him. Some people at work, this was completely my fuck up, frankly. But I was at a point when I started with the people at the new store location that I was transferred to. There were like 30 new people for me to meet and come out to or not. And so I was petrified, and at that point, frankly, just thinking about anything but she, without really considering that down the line he wouldn't be correct either. And so I had told a couple of people it was okay to call me he. I'm not really sure how I'm going to feel about that going down the road, but I do notice it when it happens, and I do feel a sense that it's not quite right. although I don't feel like pained yet when it happens. So that's the thing. Other than voice and how people tend to perceive me out in the world, I've had a little bit of fat distribution redistribution. Sorry, you may or may not be able to tell with the lighting, but the shirt used to fit me fine, and now it's pretty tight around the shoulders. It didn't used to come up this high. It didn't used to kind of flare out like that. And when I was having that conversation I mentioned with my bio family, my birth mom thought that I looked buff. That was the word she used, I think. I was like, really? Like, I don't feel buff. I feel like I have a chicken wing here, which doesn't feel good. Although, looking at myself now on the camera, I could see it. Um, so, I've had some more muscle kind of shifting up here, also perhaps some more fat. I don't know. It hasn't necessarily come with an increase of strength. Part of that is because before I moved, I was on pretty intense like exercise regimen, and so I was at a certain level of peak performance and limited somewhat by the amount of tea in my body. Versus now, where I'm really far less active than I've ever been, which is its own kind of can of worms. Um, However, I haven't seemed to lose as much strength as I probably would have if I weren't on tea. So there's that. Um, I have a little bit more of a cookie pouch than I used to, so that's what I call the like fat pad on the abdomen. And when I was pre-transition, I remember my little flab on the like lower stomach. It was more focused on like the lower stomach, and that used to be something that I felt a lot of dysphoria about. I'd say now that it's more about disordered eating and like body dysphoria, dysmorphia. Dysmorphia isn't really the right word. Versus like disliking that as a change. I think I've always had an issue with my self image with respect to my body. And like, it makes sense that as I've been less active, I would have a little bit more fat mass. That's just a thing. With that said, though, I've been growing a little bit more hair on my tummy, so that's exciting. Um, it's not super visible. I don't really think it would show up on camera right now, but I see it. And I've had a little bit of facial hair. Like, I would say I shave up here about once every 1 to 2 weeks. Um, and it's funny because the corners of my mouth were the part that first started to grow. And so those are still the part that grow the darkest, the longest, and the fastest. Still rather glacially slow. Um, I've gotten a couple of longer fuzzies down here, but they're in that stage like my mustache hairs were about, 3 months ago, where it's peach fuzz, basically. I might have slightly longer peach fuzz in places, but that's about it. Um, I've been very excited to start using a safety razor. So the ones that have a reusable handle that opens and then you put literally a razor blade inside of it and you close it back up. And it's taken a little bit of trial and error to get the hang of, but I've really been enjoying it. Actually, I quite like it. It's really funny to me that nowadays, like, I do shave, but I don't shave any of the parts of me that I used to shave. Um, I would say there are two other changes that I've been having. One is that just in the past month since my last cycle ended, oh, I still get my periods, by the way, so there's that. I've been running a little hotter, and that's been terrible because I mentioned I'm in Los Angeles, and we are known for our heat. In addition, I think my adoptive mother is secretly a lizard person, and she enjoys the house being at 80 degrees inside. Now, we moved from Santa Cruz, where 80 degrees during the day was terrible and very hot. And so that's been miserable for me, on top of running a little warmer. I have had a sense sometimes of having hot flashes. It's not as dramatic and infrequent as it was before I was on a more standard dose of testosterone. I'm thinking that it's possible that it's related to maybe my ovaries starting to slow down, and maybe I will start to get cycles less frequently or not at all. Um, but because it's been happening more frequently with that, I haven't really been sure that it's real, I guess I would say. Probably is. And the last thing to kind of talk about is mood. I've been incredibly moody over the past month or so, probably starting a couple of weeks after I upped my dose. My depression's been a little worse, and my anxiety has been a bit worse. And I've mentioned before that I struggle with codependent behaviors. And so I've noticed those a little bit having an uptick in them. Um, just a little bit more like anxiety going out and like reluctance to go out of the house and ruminating and stuff like that. Um, my impression is that it's not only hormones. I like to think that I'm pretty good at telling when I'm just being moody because my body is being a teenage boy. Um, and this has been a lot more kind of like the word that I would use is dysthymic. So it's less of like spikes of depression and then, getting worse like that. It's more kind of like a background radiation of not feeling so great. And this can be not having energy to deal with people, not having energy or desire to initiate tasks that I really need to get on top of, such as doing my vlogs, but other important things too. Um, Lack of desire for like, or not desire for, but initiation of like social connection and stuff like that. And it seems to me that a part of this is probably related to just how fucking stressful it's been to change my name, frankly. Um, Between the response that I've gotten from my adoptive family and just trying to get all the things possible to have my updated name on them. And that has involved chasing a couple of organizations down that like don't allow you to talk to customer representatives on like a phone or something like that. So like for the DMV, for example, you have no choice but to go the fuck down there and to wait in line for an hour if you want to talk to somebody. There's no phone number that's going to be helpful to you otherwise. And so, for example, for me, I'm left watching the mail forever because I can't like call somebody up and ask if there's a problem with my driver's license. And similarly, the Social Security Administration, I was trying to sign up for their online program or something like that. And I've been told that I have to physically go down there. And so I've mentioned that I don't have a car. Like combining several of the field trips that I'm expected to make in order to get people on board with my name and my identity could easily eat up like an entire week's worth of my time. And frankly, I don't have energy or bandwidth for like enjoyable tasks. Never mind highly stressful tasks where I envision a lot of red tape and struggle. So partly that's been a grave I've dug myself. Partly it's been very hard to deal with because I've been feeling less hot than usual. Ha ha ha. Because I get hot flashes. Anyway. I feel like, so it's been in part like stress of like changing my name, also stress of like dealing with my family, and the longer I keep this under wraps and the more struggles I run into with the people, or usually my partner and I are pretty good. She's been wonderful throughout all of this, but more so like with the parent that I live with and clashes in our lifestyles. It's just been a stressful fucking time. And so I guess what I'm saying is that whilst all of these stressful things are happening and I haven't really had a steady workout schedule or anything like that, I have been trying out a couple of classes, trying to figure out if I can afford to do certain kinds of gym memberships. And then when I did one of my tryout classes, I actually pulled my piriformis, I'm pretty sure. So basically one of my hip flexors or like glute muscles swelled up and put pressure on my sciatic nerve. and I was left with debilitating pain for like 2 weeks. And so that just got better as of like this week. Um, and so like just it's been this synergy of things not being a part of the support system that, for example, I had a year ago or back in January before I moved. Um, and I do really deeply feel the loss of my support network. It really fucking sucks, and it has made everything 5 billion times harder. Um, so that's been what's up with my mood. I've heard it said that tea can worsen anxiety, and so again, just it's like the link between depression and exercise. It's like exercise may not cure depression, but I'll feel worse if I don't do it. And similarly with tea, it's like the anxiety is probably already there. Is it being made worse by the chemicals in my body? I'm not really sure. Um, so, a very long update because it's been a hot minute since I last updated my vlog. But I hope all of this was informative. I'm always happy to answer questions about my experience or anything, really. Ask me almost anything. Um, I'm happy to answer. But I think that's all the update that I have for now. And